Hi, Dan.
Hi, Nick. How are you doing?
I'm good, mate. You?
I'm great, thanks. To be honest, I'm pretty excited as we're launching our Patreon over the next week.
Yes, what an absolute treat to start 2023 with. I'll tell you what, though, before we start, I'm parched. Do you have any drinks?
I don't. But our listeners could treat us to a dandelion and burdock every month to keep us hydrated for the podcast.
Sounds good, but what would they get out of it?
Well, for just £3 a month, they could get a full video episode with behind-the-scenes preamble and post-show chat every week. And let me tell you, that's
Wow.
usually a real treat.
That sounds like a real treat. That sounds awesome. I'm well up for that, but I don't need to because I'm involved. I don't need to pay.
No, but they'd get that a day earlier than everybody else with release on a Tuesday.
Surely, in that case, they'd also get the podcast version a day earlier as well.
Absolutely.
I'm concerned now we've become sellouts and decide to have adverts featured on the podcast. People will come for us with pitchforks.
Well, in this tier, they'd get the episode ad-free.
Excellent. Surely they can't get anything else in this tier.
Not really. Only an extra wrap-up podcast at the end of each season where we watch interviews and performances from the era we've discussed, and one watch-along episode a month where we'll watch and discuss a classic gig, film, or anything Arctic Monkeys related.
What, like Glasgow 2013, Live at the Apollo, Scummy Man, or Submarine?
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many more. But I'm not done yet. We'll also be putting out special birthday party episodes on each band member and associated band members' birthdays. And do you know what's good about that?
What's good about that?
Alex's is the 6th of January.
Amazing. Sounds like that'd be a great date to launch the Patreon then, with an Alex Turner birthday party episode ready and waiting for our patrons.
As always, Nick, you read my mind.
It's an amazing tier. And again, you get all that for just £3 a month.
Yep.
I don't see what else the next tier could possibly offer on top of that.
Well, if you're now well hydrated and you fancy grabbing a pint with me, our listeners can treat us to one in our local, the Cornerstone.
I'll be there in 10 minutes.
For just £5 a month, our listeners can access our Cornerstone tier and get all the great features already referenced on the previous tier. Plus, and I'm excited about this,
I'm on tenterhooks here. Or rusty hooks, as it were.
Nice. Well, our Cornerstone patrons will also get a monthly Last Shadow Puppets podcast where we'll do a deep dive into a track from the beginning of the catalogue all the way to the end.
Amazing. B-sides and all.
B-sides and all.
Wow, that's just outstanding. So all the previous features and the Shadow Puppets pod. Incredible.
Well, also, each subscriber gets to pick any song from any band or artist that doesn't feature an Arctic Monkeys member in the act or production, and we'll put the songs into a prize draw once a month. So, for example, you might pick Thank You Next by Ariana Grande. The winning subscriber will get a podcast in our format on that song. They'll stay in the prize draw until they win, and will refresh annually.
This all sounds amazing. Well, apart from the Ariana Grande bit, but yeah, that's a me issue. So, we're launching on Alex's birthday?
Yes, on the 6th of January, come to our Linktree or socials to access Patreon, where you can choose your tier of choice. Once you've signed up, you'll immediately start seeing the benefits with the Alex Turner birthday party episode.
This is all very exciting.
Isn't it just?
Well, we hope you're all as excited as we are and can help support us throughout 2023 and beyond. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
We're Arctic Monkeys. This is Don't Believe the Hype.
That rock and roll, eh? Ladies! That sound means it's the end of the round. Time for the bonus question.
Cheers, dude.
That man just yawned. We're gonna call it,
Don't Believe the Hype.
Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Don't Believe the Hype, the brand new podcast that just won't stop going on about Arctic Monkeys. You know, our girlfriends tell us, they say, shut up, stop going about Arctic Monkeys, but we've got an audience now. That's it. We've seized upon that audience and we're just going to carry on chatting absolute rubbish to them for as long as the band are going, really, because we've got a lot of catching up to do. I'm one of your hosts, Nick Lee, and of course I am joined as ever by Dan Holt. Hello, Dan.
Hello. And I just want to say that rather arrogantly, I'm going to say that we don't talk rubbish, we talk some insightful sense. And we're going to, people last week were probably blown away by some of our insights. And yeah, so I'm going to defend us to ourselves as our British nature to put ourselves down. But yeah, How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm still buzzing from last week's episode where I can't believe you're wearing the same clothes as last
Me
week
too.
as well. You scruffy bugger! What a disgrace. Yeah,
Same
I think we were
clothes,
both very surprised
different room
by
though.
how long it went. Different. Yeah, that's it. You've got to mix it up a bit, haven't you?
I don't change clothes. I just change room. Yeah, I just change rooms throughout my life and never have to change clothes because you see different people in the room. They don't know. It's good. I'm being found out now though as we enter the mainstream.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, there's upwards of 3 people listening to this who now know all our sartorial choices. Because last week we discussed Beneath the Boardwalk, the unofficial first Arctic. If whatever people say I'm not is album number 1, then Beneath the Boardwalk is very much album 0.5. Would you not say?
Ooh, 0.5. Yeah, no, I do get that. I thought you were going to go with -1. Or something like that. I was freezing temperature, -1, Arctic. It was all rolling around my head. You went with 0.5. I like it. I prefer it. I think that was better. Yeah, we did. We discussed it, and I think no, deserve it. I think we had some great discussion on that. I think even surprised ourselves with not so much insights that we provided, but just hearing influences for those kind of the future Arctic Monkeys of what will come, more so than we thought we would, even leading up to the new release. So yeah, if you didn't get a chance to listen to that, please go back and check that out. But rather excitingly, this week we are entering the first stage of what I guess you would call the sort of official beginning, with an actual, professionally produced album. So we are beginning the Whatever People Say I Am, That's What I'm Not era, and we are beginning with the first track on that album, the only place that we can begin, The View from the Afternoon. And yeah, I'm very excited about this one, Nick.
I cannot wait. This is the start of it. It's like the last 2 have been a warm up, but now we're into the meat of things. Now we're into where it properly started. First of all, though, we'll play a little clip for the listeners. We've got a copyright friendly 30-second snippet of the song for you to listen to, which is following right now. This is it here.
Anticipation as a habit to set you up, but disappointment and evening entertainment. But tonight I'll be some love. Tonight I'll be a rookie share, regardless of what's gone before. I want to see all of the things that we've.
There we go. That was a copyright-friendly snippet of The View from the Afternoon, side 1, track 1 of Whatever People Say I Am, That's What I'm Not. And before we go to Dan for a feature that we've imaginatively called the information action ratio, of course, if you didn't learn anything from last week's show, then, well, what were you doing? I mean, what were you listening to if you didn't learn anything from last week? But we have a little jingle for this section, believe it or not. It's not like we went on about the jingles last week at all or anything. We kept it pretty much on the down low. But here's another one anyway.
The information action ratio is the place to go.
It's just great, isn't it? Still love that. Yes, I have prepared some information. Oh, it's fantastic. I have prepared some information for everyone on The View from the Afternoon, which featured as the opening track on the band's debut album, Whatever People Say I Am, That's What I'm Not, recorded in September 2005 by Jim Abyss. Now, I did some digging, and there are conflicting reports on other people involved in the producing of this album. There was an Ewan Davies mentioned. So if these guys are listening, I hope they appreciate this nod, because I really didn't have to do this. Alan Smythe gets a reference again, and he obviously, if you were listening last week, produced the demos, so perhaps that's why he gets a nod. There was an assistant called Henry, which I would like to think he was French, and he was called, Henri. It was Henri.
Exchange student.
This was mixed by Barney. He was, work experience. But it was mixed by Barney with his assistant, Owen Skinner. So Barney deemed important enough to have an assistant. So a lot of people there.
Assistant to the engineer.
Assistant to the engineer. Some could be true. Some of that could be true. All of that could be true. none of that could be true. But the information's out there now, and it's for you to decide. But yeah, thought I'd give them all a nod. And
should we just bear in mind that this is Wikipedia as well? So by the time we get to a certain romance,
whoa, Nick.
I'm going to have a co-writing credit.
I'm gonna stop you there. You think none of this is Wikipedia, my friend? I dug for these names. I scoured. I was a good 15 pages into Google for this information page. I'll have you know. So let's not bring you your Wikipedia like I'm just copying and pasting from Wikipedia here. I've done my job. How dare you? The names are out there. There are possibly people involved, possibly people that weren't involved. That's absolutely fine. And if they are all involved, then this is a testament that the phrase "too many cooks spoil the broth." Not in this case, I would say. But the track is 3 minutes and 42 seconds long and has a tempo of 146 beats per minute. It currently has 72.7 million streams on Spotify, and it was expected to be the band's third single, but unexpectedly, as they like to do, the band announced in March 2006 that they would instead be releasing a 5-track EP, Who the Fuck Are Arctic Monkeys? The View from the Afternoon will be the first track on the EP and come with an accompanying video. But the 5-track nature of the EP would disqualify it from the UK singles chart as it was too long and would simultaneously also disqualify it from the UK album chart because it was cost too little. Bloody UK red tape. Alex Turner said at the time, "This is one of the last songs written for the album. There's nothing clever. It's just about anticipating the evening, finding comfort in familiarity, and the fact that you know you're bound to send a daft message or something before the sun comes up. I think I've stopped doing that now. However, if later track Why Do You Only Call Me When You're High is anything to go by, then he has not yet stopped doing that circa 2013. Now, that's a little bit of information for you there. I have prepared a review off the internet.
Means I get to hit
just queuing up for Nick's jingle there. He loves his jingles, as you know.
My role on this show has become very clear already, and I am completely fine with it.
Yeah. Many would say, I think, because you're the jingle controller and you do the intro, that you say that you're the host and I'm the contributor. Let's say, does that make you feel better? You can say that you're the host and I'm the contributor.
No, I'd say
I'm the expert. I'm joking.
I'd go close. That's the laminated catalogue at the front of Argos, and you're the actual important stuff in the back. Is how I'd view it. But whichever, I'm just happy to be here, mate. I'm happy to be out of the house, except I'm still in the house. But still, it's all good.
And for any of our, I was going to say intergalactic listeners, then don't think we got any of them yet until we get to Tranquility Base. Some of our non-UK listeners, Argos is a imagine if before the internet, Amazon existed, but you could walk into it, and the same way that you would order stuff, you would do that from a big book onto a keypad. And yes, it may sound futuristic, but it was a shithole. So let's move on. But as you nicely queued up there with a beautiful bit of 4 stars out of 5. Again, struggled to find reviews for this track. I think maybe because it was so long ago and there was a lot of print then, and maybe websites aren't archiving it. Helpfully, The Guardian recently put together a top list of the best Arctic Monkey songs, written by someone who clearly knew what he was talking about because it was a great list with some great insight. And they put The View from the Afternoon at number 4 in a list of the greatest Arctic Monkey songs, stating that the song features jagged guitars, frantic drums, and brilliant lyrical drawing of the hours before a big night out begins. So I think actually, as we jump into our thoughts, Nick, should we perhaps start with the music before the lyrics? Do you think?
Yeah, let's.
Because I think, What are your thoughts and insights on the music of this great track?
I think straight from the start, it kind of blends those elements of everything that I've loved. The kind of jagged call and response nature of the guitars is very Libertines, and which the Libertines, of course, took from the Clash. But when you told me the beats per minute at the start, I was not surprised at all, because it's absolutely relentless. It just doesn't let up until that pause towards the end, which gives one of those awkward Arctic Monkeys moments that they always had early on. Because there was a couple of songs like When the Sun Goes Down has a thing like that where you think the song's finished, and you kind of have that awkward thing of the band having to be like, oh, it's not
Yeah.
finished. It's not finished. It's finished.
Yeah, not finished. Finished. Yeah. Yeah, no, completely agree. And I think, it's weird because you say things there about the Libertines and that kind of guitar, and obviously there's the Strokes in there as well. I've always thought, although that inspiration is apparent, the strange thing about this album is at the same time, it also sounds like nothing else I'd heard before or since. So that the way this song sounds, the guitars, I can't think of anything else to compare it to, apart from, like, as you say, the style, in terms of that kind of the way that they're playing the guitar, but the actual sound of it, I'd never heard anything like it before, and I don't think I have since. Maybe you have, but it's just complete. Just strange to use the word original in this world, because nothing really is original, but it really did sound that way to me.
Yeah, 100%. It's just it's kind of got that sound that you only really get from the seminal debut album. So you think like definitely maybe Stone Roses, the Smiths, those kind of debut albums where within the first 10 seconds it's just grabbed you by the bollocks, that sort of thing. Libertine's first album is a prime example as well, and it just doesn't let up. Just doesn't let up at all. What an introduction! We've not even got onto the lyrical side of things, which is probably the best introduction to Arctic Monkeys you can ever have. But it's just as a track one, side one. That's surely what every new band should be aspiring to. Something like The View from the Afternoon, surely.
Well, I think, again, speaking musically before we move on to the lyrics, the ferociousness of the guitar, as you say, is just there, and then it goes even heavier in the chorus, but then also has this kind of simple lead guitar over it. This nothing too. It's not really a solo. It's just a bit of guitar over the chorus there, but with the verse and chapter starting, it's that simple kind of just little lead guitar over there. It's just adding so much, even though it's quite simple. But of course, the way the bass comes in and out of the song as well, it's there at the start, and then it goes away, and then it comes in halfway through the verse. It layers. It's got this. The guitars are there, the singing, and then the drums come back in, and then the bass comes in. It's just all very cleverly layered. But look, we touch on the drums there briefly, but this song for me is all about the drums. These drums are incredible. For a start, when I think that this person, because this was, as Alex said in that quote, was one of the last songs that they wrote. So this wasn't like a Beneath the Boardwalk song. It wasn't then. They wrote that when they were recording the album. And to think at that point that Matt Helders had been playing drums for about 3-4 years max at this point I can't even contemplate it. It's phenomenal. It's astounding. Some of the drums in this song, they're so in your face. They're so incredible. I mean, they specifically dedicate the music video to showing the drums. They dedicated an extra on a live DVD, Live at the Apollo, to just a multicam shot of him playing the drums. And it's funny because he considers he considered that he got better at the drums from Favorite Worst Nightmare on. There's a story he tells that we'll obviously talk about when that time comes. But with the drums in this song, I just can't even get over the fact that he'd been playing for such a little time, and they're just so good. They groove in and out of hip hop, then into rock, and you got that indie in there, and they're just constant. They're just non-stop. They are, for me, they are this song, apart from obviously the lyrics and stuff like that, but the drums are just this song. I'm going on a rant because I'm still 20 years on amazed by these drums, even now listening to it. Like, even listening to it, today before we recorded this, it still gets me every time. I just can't believe how good they are.
It's like if you played this track to someone who'd not listened to Arctic Monkeys before and told them beforehand that the drummer went on to drum for Lady Gaga, P. Diddy, Iggy Pop, you listen to this song and you're like, yeah, I can see him with all of those three. No problem whatsoever. Just
because technical
showing that versatility, but the technical ability as well. Perfect.
Yeah, technical ability, like you say, the versatility to move into that's the reason why he has toured with people like P Diddy and like that hip hop versatility and then rock, and yeah, they're just incredible. And as well, to give Jim Abyss, the producer, his dues here, this song sounds incredible. The way the drums sound, it reminds me of the way that the drums sound in certain Joy Division tracks, and famously they recorded some of that outside. To get that effect, but just the hard beating of the drum, really, and the fact that Helder's kind of aspired at a certain time to be kind of like the Queens of the Stone Age drummer when he saw them live, and I think he was already halfway there. The way he's hitting the drums on this song is just, when you see him doing it as well, it's crazy. And I certainly will admit that in the early days when I first heard these tracks, the first album, the drums weren't really on my radar for some reason. I think I was just so impressed by the lyrics that the drums weren't standing out to me, and it wasn't until I became more and more impressed with Helders as albums went on that when I listened to it back again, I was like, why the hell did I not realize that these drums are absolutely incredible? I think I was just bowled over by other elements, so I missed it. But oh wow, yeah, I can't talk highly enough of the drums in this song. Yeah, it's crazy. But to move on to the guitars, I think the guitars are very impressive in this, particularly. Which bit really impresses me? The breakdown. Because I remember when I first heard that, and it stops, and then it's ding, 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 ding. I thought at first it sounds like they're going back and forth, and I thought, but that would be ridiculously hard. So it must just be one guitar doing that, and it's a bit of a, they're putting it through the stereo or whatever in the production. And then you see them doing it, and anyone that plays guitar can tell you that to do that back and forth with each other, because you're essentially playing one chord and the person's playing the next chord, and that quick, that would normally be something that you would play by yourself that quickly, but to switch between is just insane, actually, when you think about that, to do that kind of, and you have to have such an in-tuneness with each other to be able to do that, as Alex and Jamie do. Yeah, it's just musically, I think this is probably musically, although maybe not, I'm not going to say it's my favorite riff or the best riffs as we go on, but I would say technically, music speaking, this is probably the best track on the album, I would say.
Yes.
And I might be being a bit premature with that, but I'm just thinking now, and I can't think of anything technically better. So yeah, that's kind of just my thoughts on this. Yeah, I just think it's an incredible technical track, and it all sounds great. And all around the band, the producer, everybody deserves a huge applause for this. And I think it's interesting to find out, because I wasn't aware of it until I was doing the research, actually, that this was one of the last songs that they wrote from, in fact, I was so unaware of it that I actually went to Beneath the Boardwalk to try and listen to the original demo, and then, because I just assumed it existed, and then realized that it didn't, and that they wrote it last, one of the last ones. And I think that shows that this is the most technically impressive song, and it's also the last one that they wrote. And so when you think that the natural progression is the Beneath the Boardwalk tracks that we discussed last week, and then the ones that made it onto Whatever People Say I Am, and then View from the Afternoon, and then Favorite Worst Nightmare, the progression makes sense when you think of it in that way. And I just think this, and just, what a song to open an album with musically as well. I just all around incredible.
I've got a thing for those kind of like opening tracks of albums that just grab you by the bollocks from like the first second and won't let go. That's like a real fetish. Is fetish the right word? It is now. It's a fetish of mine.
Fetish, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I mean, even that drum, the way the drums start is just, straight into it. Especially when, and I think this is something that you'll probably say as we get into the lyrics that we will both agree on. But the build up to this being released, the hype, don't believe the hype. Hey, the title. Don't believe the hype and all that, and the way it was being built up and this huge band and everything, to just come in with those drums and that riff straight away is a proper kind of like, oh, did you think this was actually just hype? No, fuck you, this is going to be one of the best albums of a generation, and this is how it's going to start. Yeah, it's what can you say? It's a song that's written to be perfect as an album opener and perfect as an encore opener. I'd say that's kind of its perfect place in the universe. But I guess that's a good time to move into a little bit more of a lyrical chat, isn't it?
That is as good a time as any.
Too busy with the mind on clever lines.
I'll never get tired of these jingles. I mean, I obviously I won't get tired of them because I say after every jingle I won't get tired of them, and I won't. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not
It's
gonna
become
lie
a jingle.
to you about
Become a jingle of
jingles.
itself.
Yeah.
You've become the jingle. Is the jingle you, or are you playing the jingle, or is the jingle playing you, Nick? That's the question we're here to answer. It's become an intervention.
Finally, I thought it'd be a lot quicker than third episode for the intervention to come, but yeah, here it is. Brilliant.
Here it is.
Yeah, so onto the lyrics then. In terms of side one, track one of your first album, and the first line is anticipation as a habit to set you up for disappointment. Just so self-aware from the start as well. Like kind of starting is the mean to go on. But yeah, lyrically, just what a way to set the tone for the rest of the album. Yeah, just as a statement of intent. You go back to the opening, the first Stone Roses album. The first line is, "I don't have to sell my soul; it's already in me." And it's just that kind of first line of Definitely Maybe is, "I live my life in the city. There ain't no easy way out." It's just those kind of seminal opening lines that set the tone for the rest of the album. And it's no coincidence that those albums I've just named, alongside this one, are probably generally the debut album of a generation, if not the album of a generation. And it fits the theme so well that Arctic Monkeys would go on and do that. Really sets the tone for the rest of not just the rest of the album, but the rest of the career.
Definitely, and I think it's incredible that it's got this kind of double meaning. So obviously the song is about the anticipation of a night out, literally anticipation is the habit to set you up for disappointment and even entertainment. But, and we'll get into the sort of literal discussion in a minute, but to also have that double meaning because of all this hype, and it's very similar to saying "Don't believe the hype," isn't it? At the start of a video, the anticipation is the habit to set you up. They're almost saying, the anticipation of this, as you said, has a habit to set you up, but you might be disappointed in this album because of the hype. It's another way of him saying "Don't believe the hype" again. And I always wonder what the chicken and the egg was. With this, was it what came first, the chicken or the dickhead? But I always wonder whether it was. Did Alex purposely sit down and go, okay, I'm writing this song about the anticipation of a night out, and then he thought, oh, this could also be a double meaning of our lead into this album and all the hype? Or did he go, right, I'm going to write a song about the hype that's building here, but I don't want it to be obvious, so what can I mask it behind? And he came up with that, and I don't know which it was. Maybe it was unintentional and he just wrote it as a song about the anticipation of a night out, and then they went, oh, light bulb moment, that could work as the opener because the line kind of works. Interesting to wonder whether he intended that all along or kind of stumbled into it. I don't know. Knowing Alex now, I'd say it was intended all along. Alex then, who knows? But
So yeah, it was obviously a staple in the set list from very early on. Various festival headlining appearances. It was still there. Kind of disappeared for a while, and then it got dusted off again at the Royal Albert Hall on the live album for Tranquility Base, where Alex says it was under threat of death if he doesn't play it, which makes you think it was a full band decision. He was overruled there, and then promptly went on to forget the words, which is, I always like that little human element. But yeah, when they played it at the Reading Festival a few weeks back, I like how he introduced it as Square One and just went straight into it. But I can sort of see why. I think it's a big thing for a lot of people how they don't tend to play a lot of stuff from this era. But I mean, would you want to see your MySpace profile from when you were 16 or 17? I know I wouldn't.
I mean, I would if I'd written this song. But,
yeah. Spoiler alert, you didn't, man. I didn't either. Horrible.
I didn't. No, we didn't come close. See the introductory pod for more chat on our failed band. But it was. But yeah, I think they do. This is a staple, isn't it? And I think Dance Floor went out and came back, and so this is a staple because they know even as they progress that this is just a fucking great song. this is always going to be there because it's just an absolute tune musically, and I think even they're probably still impressed and excited to play it. When they get to play it. Did they actually? Have I got that right? Is it still in the sets? It is, isn't it? Mainly still in the sets, isn't it?
The last few weeks, the set list has had View from the Afternoon / Ritz to the Rubble, so it's been whichever one they fancy playing at the time.
Yeah, and I just think it's just it still holds up as a rock song. It fits in with the newer stuff as well. I think up to AM certainly. It's just I think it's a song that it's one of them. Maybe it's more accessible. It always, to our kind of transatlantic listeners, I always wonder this first album what your thoughts on it are, because lyrically it's so British that I imagine a lot of the references pass you by. For example, there's a reference in this to "You'll Never Beat the Bandit No," which is a reference to what we call here a fruit machine, which is something that you would find in a pub that you would gamble on, basically. Google it. It's fruit machine, and there's one called "Beat the Bandit," and he's saying, the night I never beat the bandit now, which I think also kind of has a double meaning to, you'll never beat the anticipation getting you. You never avoid that. I think it's got that kind of meaning, and so I always wonder what. I think it must be the music that's most accessible about this album to people from not these shores, I would imagine, apart from like dance floor and stuff, which is obviously, everyone's experienced that. And maybe when you Google what the song's about, you kind of get it more. But, it is very, you can't say that it's not very British, this album, is it? It's very, not only very British, but very northern as well. Like, so just specific areas of Britain, precisely, so that always intrigues me. So I can only imagine the music, which is because it's such an accessible song musically, I think that's why it's still a staple in there. In the
it's
live
absolutely
stuff,
in terms of it being very English, it reminds me in that respect, although the sound is completely different, but in terms of just those little kind of vignettes of Britain that are thrown in, it reminds me of Village Green Preservation Society by the Kinks in that respect, in which you'll listen to the first 10-15 seconds and you'll be like, yeah, this is an English band. This could only have been done by an English band. You know what I mean? But it's amazing looking back nearly 20 years on now that there's a reference in there, and I'm gonna challenge you to guess, but there's a reference and there's a line in the song that is very outdated now, and even English people come in fresh to this song won't understand the reference. Do you know what it is?
Are you making a reference to the unlocking of a Nokia 3210?
When she's pressed the star after she's pressed none of this fingerprint unlock business, none of this facial recognition or biometrics or anything. None of that. No. Star unlock. Yeah.
So perhaps we should explain for anyone who doesn't know what that is, because I have seen it. Sometimes when I've watched videos on this, or when people on YouTube will post them listening to the song for the first time, I see a lot in the comments of people asking what this is in reference to, because, like you say, not only a British reference, but anyone under our age, basically, sort of early to mid 30s, wouldn't really know what this was a reference to. So there used to be a mobile phone, back in the sort of very early-ish days. So when the song came out, 2005, it was like a little tiny phone that you could barely do anything from, send a couple of texts, make calls, play a game called Snake. It was a black and white screen, and to unlock it, you had to press the star at the bottom left of the keyboard, and then it would say unlock on the screen, and you would press it, and that's how it would unlock. So there's quite a few references like that on this album that are kind of outdated now, but a brilliant line and a brilliant reference. There's a lot of those in songs like Certain Romance that are very much of a place in a time, but he always captures that, whether it be things he references in AM will be not relevant in 20 years probably, but again, I do think actually spiritually, and I kind of alluded to it when I was reading the information of this, that I think this song and Why'd You Only Call Me When You're High are very linked lyrically. The reference to getting drunk and texting somebody, it's basically what that song is about as well. More from this is about the kind of, no, it is, they're both snarky, they're both kind of talking about how ridiculous it is, I suppose, that you would do that. So I think they're very similar. I think they're basically, Why Do You Want to Call Me When You're High is about that lyric. It's that lyric extrapolated into a whole song. I'd say, in a more modern setting. I say
I'd say
modern, it was a decade ago.
I think oh bloody hell, don't make me feel old. I think knee socks kind of has the same theme running through it, not to the same extent as the others, but yeah, it just goes. I think I saw an interview with Alex at some point where he was talking about what he's writing about, and he said, "Oh, it's just love and fancying people, and that's what it's always been," and it is.
But yeah, I would categorize it slightly differently in that this album, Humbug and AM in particular, have a lot of tracks about that, because I would say Suck It and See It is more about love than sex.
Yeah,
perhaps I could be proved wrong when we get onto that, but we're talking about sex and horniness. Humbug does it in a much more abstract way, whereas this album and AM are very linked, and it is no. You'd probably say it's no surprise, perhaps, then this album and AM are the most commercially successful albums. Perhaps that says something about society. I don't know, but yeah, they're all about that kind of But this song in particular, and what I was getting into was musically, is that this song accessibility. I think when you think about how Josh Homme produced Humbug, and you think about, I always used to think about, I wonder what it was that he saw in them. That he thought he could work with, him based off what Queens of the Stone Age had done up until that point. And I think the drums probably played a big part in that. But I can imagine Josh Homme listening to this song, a song like this, when he was considering working with them and thinking, oh, okay, there's something here. There's something here. This band have got something, and I can take them somewhere. So yeah, I just think it's musically incredible. Lyrics, it's so true. The lyrics on this, don't you think? And I remember back to when we used to go out when we were younger, and you would always, and even now to some extent, the nights that are planned are never as good as the nights that are on the cuff. Off the cuff. You know, when you've been months planning a night, it's always a disappointment. And then, or anything, I suppose, anticipation for anything is always a disappointment. But the off the cuff situations are the best, and he just absolutely nailed that in this song. And it's never, it's completely true.
It's amazing. We've talked about how there's like references that are now out of date and stuff, but it's still a track that could have been recorded yesterday. It still sounds so fresh, which is something that I'm finding a lot as I'm like going back listening through stuff in preparation for this. It's not like I've ever thought it sounded dated or anything, but it just really hits you in the face just how fresh it all sounds still, especially compared to if you look at a lot of the bands that were around at the time. A lot of their stuff hasn't aged very well, and that's, I suppose, is why they're still having the success they are now, because they have kind of moved and stuff like that and kept it sounding fresh.
Yeah, and I don't want to, it's something that we've talked about before, and I think to extrapolate that point, I don't want to name a band and feel bad about it, but so we were talking about, there was a band at the time called Little Man Tate, and I'm only using this because it's a good explanation of what you just said. It's a good example, in that they had a song about a house party called House Party at Boovies. Go and listen to it on Spotify. We at the time absolutely loved that song, and it felt like the lyrics were so accurate as to the house parties that we were attending, and it was this really cool song in the same way that Alex's lyrics felt like we were living them and he was narrating our lives. And then you go back and you listen to that song now and you think, yeah, this isn't that great, and the lyrics aren't actually that witty, and it's not that clever words. So I think the difference is that although Alex's lyrics are narrating a situation, he's also making some insightful points that are written really well, and they're just really witty and clever, and they hold up over time. Whereas somebody else doing a weaker version of that doesn't really stand the test of time. Again, I don't want to kind of name check them, but it's a good example of a similar style.
Yeah, it's very similar to in the 90s. You obviously had the big Oasis and Blur rivalry. Over here, obviously it didn't make it to America, but over here in England, like the record companies would make sure they were releasing a single on the same day, and it was just this all-out war with them saying some pretty horrible stuff about each other in the press. But this was the main story on the evening news every night, was Oasis and Blur. This was like big news, front of the newspapers and everything. And then with them both being so popular and signed to actual independent labels, it's worth pointing out. I mean, Oasis were signed to Creation, who also had like Primal Scream and bands like that. So that the major labels decided they wanted a piece of. So you kind of had this raft of absolute shite. Just bands like Gene and Menswear, who were nowhere near as good as Blur and Oasis, but they were categorized as indie because the major labels would all make themselves like an indie sub-label, so they could get away with calling it indie and getting in the indie charts. And it was very much the same with Arctic Monkeys. Arctic Monkeys were the band that kind of spearheaded that happening again. Not through any fault of their own, but there was a lot of, and the term that gets thrown about now is indie landfill, is a term you see kind of thrown about a lot for those. But I saw Razorlight get chucked in with it, but I always thought Razorlight were more of a Libertines copy than an Arctic Monkeys one. But yeah, with Arctic Monkeys, it got to a point
he was
where
in Libertines, wasn't he? Yeah.
He was the original bass player for one gig and what have you. And then, but there was a lot at the time. There was a lot of Sheffield bands that kind of got bigger than they should have done, just based on being from Sheffield and singing about the same stuff Arctic Monkeys were. So there was Bromhead's Jacket, Little Man Tate, the Long Blondes, actually, another one who've reformed recently. And then obviously we have Milburn, who were actually, fun fact, they were actually a band before Arctic Monkeys. They were like kind of what spurred them on to get instruments and kind of get themselves into the band and everything. But obviously Tom Rowley from Milburn is now pretty much the fifth Arctic Monkey now as well. It's been for about 12 years or so.
Yeah, and obviously, heavyweight champion of the world and all that. That was all that scene, wasn't it? And
I completely forgot about Reverend and the Makers.
Reverend and the Makers, and obviously Reverend and the Makers in Melbourne were before Arctic Monkeys. But you're right. What it is it's when these companies get a sniff of something. So in the 90s, they got a sniff of this Britpop. So any band that had a reasonably good Britpop song would get signed because it could be a success. And then it happened again, with this indie stuff in the early 2000s. And it goes in other industries as well. If somebody writes, when Harry Potter was out, there was all these other fantasy wizard books coming out. And when Guy Ritchie films were big, there was all these crap, East London gangster films being produced. It's the same with anything. They mass produce it until it's died a death. And that's what they did with this. But obviously Arctic Monkeys are different. They can evolve and they had more talent. Let's just be honest. They had vast more talent than the other bands, so they lasted. And there was a moment there when I thought your point was going to be you were going to compare the Oasis Blur rivalry to the Arctic Monkeys Little Man Tate rivalry for a moment there. I thought that's where you were heading. Not quite as. If you remember, they tried to have the media tried to create a Killer's Bravery rivalry. Do you remember that? The Bravery, they had that,
which was very weird.
Very weird, and also. It was obviously the Killers were better. It wasn't much of a, and there was a lot of bands.
The Killers just seem like the nicest guys as well. I don't think the Killers would want to be involved in anything like that. They just seem like nice fellas.
And I think the people that were genuinely talented at that time, that weren't just, producing some couple of crap songs because the record labels wanted a cheap hit, levitated towards each other. So a good example of not only a great drummer, but also a good band from the time, Block Party. They were friends with Arctic Monkeys. I think the cream always rises to the top, and they all kind of knew who the good ones were and who the ones that would die off were. And that's a talent in itself to be able to know that, I suppose. To get back into a little bit more dissection of the lyrics, because I think they're really fun to talk about. I do think it was something that I referenced on the first podcast, but there's a lyric here, which is, and I'll just say this now, it's my favorite lyric of the song, which is a segment that we have. And I believe there might even be a jingle for it.
Yes, there is.
Too busy with the mind on clever lines.
And so there's a lyric which is, so obviously we know that this is a good lyric. We've already kind of referenced that. She won't be surprised and she won't be shocked when she's pressed the start. She's pressed unlocked, which is obviously saying that the girl is expecting you to text her. And when she unlocks her phone. Now, the lyric that I like is actually the next part is my favourite lyric, which is, and there's verse and chapter sat in her inbox, and all that is said is that you've drank a lot. Now, I referenced on the first podcast this way of him saying something in a different way than other people would. And it's basically what he's saying there is that she won't be surprised that when you've had a few drinks, you're finally going to get the courage, or the Dutch courage, as we say. The Duchess Dutch Courage in
Courage
Manchester.
Sheffield.
But the courage to text you'll have a few drinks and you'll have the courage to text me, and that doesn't surprise her because you always do that. You won't text sober, you'll be too scared of it. And I think we can all relate to that. We've all done that, not have the balls to tell someone that you fancy them and then stupidly do it when you're drunk. And in my experience, it's usually not going very well. but we've all done that, and we all lived that when we were younger. And I think that most people might just say it like that, or they would say something like, "You've got the had too many drinks." Text you. What he's doing is he's taking that element of you not having courage of being able to speak, and he's applying that to the writer's block, which is obviously something that writers have when they don't feel like they can write anymore. They just can't get their head into it around it, which is the same as what you do when you don't know what to say to a girl. So yeah, my favorite lyric is probably, and you can pull your heart out around 3 o'clock when the 2 for ones have done. It says here, I've done the writer's block, but I think I've always thought it was undone the writer's block.
Undone.
I'm going to stick with that. Bloody Google. But yeah, I haven't done the writer's block, and I think that's that thing I referenced in the first podcast that we did, where I said the way that he will change something you could say one way in a more literal sense, and he'll change it and he'll kind of put an image in your head. So obviously what he's saying there is that you have a few drinks and you get the courage to text a girl, basically, and it's something he references a couple of times in the song, but have the courage to text her when you've had a few drinks. What he's done, instead of just saying that literally, is he's thought, what can you compare that not being able to say to a girl, not being able to get the words out, and he compared it to writer's block, which is obviously something that writers get when they can't write their next book. They just can't get into it. They run out of ideas, and he's compared it to that brilliantly. So he's then able to put that in the lyric and say it in this really original way, and then also to say when the 2 for 1, and it's that thing again culturally where he's not said at any point there that he's having loads of drinks and that's enabled him to know what to say. He's used 2 for 1. He's used culture to just say 2 for 1, and we all know what he means. We all know he's referring to alcohol, where they'll have kind of 2 for 1 offers on drinks. It's funny that he never actually talks about drinking in that, but we know exactly what he means just by referencing that cultural reference at the time, because they were everywhere at the time. 2 for 1, there's 2, still is, 2 for 1 cocktails and stuff. But which is a favorite of mine, a 2 for 1 cocktail. But espresso martini. For the listeners who care, espresso martini is my favorite cocktail. Don't call the martini police.
If you want to send Dan some espresso martinis, then do it to arcticmonkeyspodcast@gmail.com, and also follow us on social media. We are at Arctic Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Reddit as well. We've got a Reddit account under Arctic Podcast as well.
If you do, then remember specifically espresso martinis, because I don't like gin. So if you send me a normal martini, I will just throw it in the bin. So yeah, please remember espresso martinis. No one wants that. But yeah, no, it's to just to say it in that way, to say when 2 for 1 unlocks the writer's block, it's just a really smart, witty way of saying I drank too much and that enabled me to pluck up the courage to text you some shite about how much I like you. And he's just encapsulating all that in this one line without even saying most of the words in there that reference it, but he just puts that in your head, that image. And I just think that's something he will do, as this is the first track he's going to be. That's something that he's going to do pretty much in every track, probably, as we go through this. So, yeah, I just think that's an incredible line.
It's amazing for those references to be just so on point. I don't think there's anyone who listened to that when it came out and thought, I don't understand what they're on about here. It was just him basically pointing things out, going, look at this. It's like Peter Kay, but good. You know what I mean? It's like, do you remember this? Do you remember 2 for 1 offers on drinks and all that? And it's just so on the nose, absolutely spot on. And when it came out, I remember thinking there was nothing like this. There was just absolutely nothing that was kind of pointing to that culture. The Streets kind of had a good go at it, but I think Arctic Monkeys kind of probably another band that they were influenced by. Actually, the Streets. I think you can see elements of Mike Skinner's influences, particularly on this album. but there was no one else. There was no one else doing that.
Well, I think the reason why Arctic Monkeys might have pulled that off better is because although him and Mike Skinner might have been doing slightly similar things, and you could probably say Alex had the edge on it lyrically, they had the music as well. Unlike the Streets, where you could say, a lot of the music's a bit not great, Whereas so when you've already got Alex Turner's wit and lyrics at the top of it, and then you've also got Helder on drums beneath that, and then the bass and the guitar as well, then it's just that's why it kind of stands out, I think. And we've got it all, and also as we say, the way they progressed, as we always say, they're able to do that. Whereas I think even somebody like Mike Skinner and that, they're never going to get to that. There was a ceiling, isn't there, for certain people? And Arctic Monkeys, every album seemed to be breaking through that ceiling and changing who we perceive them to be. So, but yeah, I think as well, another lyric that really encapsulates that kind of we say about the anticipation. And now I can say now, as somebody who's in the 30s and used to go out a lot, and you too, that now we recognize that anticipation does have the habit to set you up for disappointment. The night's never as good when you plan it, but there's a bit of, even though Alex references that, there's also a bit of bravado in this song when he says, "Tonight there'll be a ruckus year regardless of what's gone before. I want to see all the things that I've already seen." And I think that back then, even though I recognized what he was saying, like him, I still had that every time. Fell for it every time. I'd be like, you'd have a few pre-drinks and you'd be like, "No, tonight's gonna be fucking incredible. This is the one. This is gonna be a fucking great night." And there were a lot of great nights. I could name so many great nights that we had as well. But yeah, I think it's something now that you look back on and go, it's funny, but I did definitely fall for it. And that's another thing that I like about Alex's lyrics that he does a lot, is where he says the cynical thing of anticipation as a habit to set you up. But then he also references the fact that he's talking shit and he still falls for it himself. He still thinks it's going to be a ruckus and he wants it to be better. So he's pointing out, and he does that a lot in this album, actually, I think, as we go through and other albums as well. But yeah, he's always pointing out his own almost nonsense. And I think, on a track on Tranquility Base, I think he specifically points that out, But yeah, I always like that about him, that he can be cynical, but then also, pull it back and have a kind of look outside of himself as well as he does it, which I think is a skill to have.
Yeah, there's almost that youthful naivety in there. This week.
Oh yes, great line. Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. Well done.
Yeah, because I know that's exactly, at that age, 18, 19, like listening to this album while getting ready to go out, knowing I'm going to be living out the entire plot of the album in like 2 or 3 hours time. Yeah, it is kind of like nicely optimistic at the same time. You have got that sneering nature of it, but at the same time, that there is kind of like the shoots of optimism there. There is this kind of like this undercurrent where it's like, well, this might be the week where it all changes. It might be.
Well, it's like he does it in, obviously we'll get there, but Still Take You Home, he kind of pointing out that this girl is, a bit of a, knob. He doesn't really like her, but then he's like, but I'd still take you home. It's that same kind of thing of pointing it out, but then going, yeah, but I'm full of shit because I would still do it. Which I think we all do constantly. But yeah, no, it's just really, even now when I listen to it, puts me in that mindset still. If I'm going out for a drinking session or something and I crack that on, it puts me right back there in that moment of the start of getting really excited for the evening. In fact, I sometimes struggle to listen to this album kind of midweek when I'm trying not to drink, because I drink for the weekend. Because if I do, I might crack, and have some kind of all-night session. But yeah, it's I just think it still takes me back there. I said this on the first podcast that this album is probably my favorite album nostalgia-wise ever, because it just takes me right back to a certain time in my life. But it's this song really hits that spot for me. Yeah, I can't. What a great song to open an album with, but what a great song for us to be able to open the podcast with as well, isn't it? It's just been absolutely, it's just a great track to dive in with.
Yeah, and that's kind of before we wrap up. I'm going to shower you with a bit of a hot take. or a red hot revelation, if you will.
Flicks a red hot revelation off the tip of her tongue.
Yeah.
Ooh, well, go on, I'm excited.
Oh God! So yeah, but my hot take, and I'm inviting the listeners to get involved in this one. Both of them, they can get involved, and if they get in touch, arcticmonkeyspodcast@gmail.com or follow.
How are you, Mum and Dad?
Podcast, and yeah, come round. But yeah, so I put it to you that this is the greatest side one track one ever. I mean, there's some stiff competition in there. You're looking at Rock and Roll Star, Oasis, Joy Division would be in there with Disorder. Got The Clash, Janie Jones. I Want to Be Adored by the Roses. Queen is Dead by the Smiths is also side one track one. But yeah, get in touch. If you can think of any better, I mean, we're preaching to the converted here, aren't we? So they're all going to get in touch. And go, yes, you are right. Yes, you are a good-looking pair.
Well, no, because I think I'm going to say that for me personally, it would be, but I'm open, obviously, to the idea that Rock and Roll Stars and Oasis opener, or any of them that you just referenced are going to be up people's lists as well, in there. And you could say culturally, I don't know, it's a weird one because I always feel like even though this album was huge, I don't know how the sands of time, because when you talk about Oasis in that moment, people kind of don't like to talk about Arctic Monkeys in that way. Perhaps I don't know why. So it's all conjecture, isn't it? It's all what each person thinks. But yeah, I think it is. I mean, I'm sure there's probably loads of different. I mean, what's the first track on Ziggy Stardust? That's not Bowie's first album, though, is it? I suppose.
No, I'm not.
I always think of it as, but it's not.
In general,
it's 5 years, but is it not to be the first album? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
well, yeah, you got
in general, yeah.
5 years. Good song, but probably doesn't beat this as much of a barnstormer. But what I will say is, and I will argue with anyone for this, is even though I'm not going to say it's the most important opening track, because people will always say like Rock and Roll Star and stuff like that, and I'm not sure what Blur's opening track, what one of Blur's opening tracks might be, but what I will say is that it's musically, a technical ability, lyrically written, gotta be one of the best, right? Regardless if it's kind of whatever you want to say about its cultural significance, I can't think. Even Rock and Roll Star is a good song, but I wouldn't say technically the whole band's better than this. Do you know what I mean by that? I wouldn't say again, I think the drums do a lot of the work on this in terms of making it even amplifying it even better. But yeah, I just think you wouldn't. It's just an absolute tune, and I just think it's I think I'm going to agree with you. But I'm going to also acknowledge that we may be biased and we may be wrong. But you saying it isn't so biased, because I'm sure you could probably think of loads that you would pit it up against in bands that you like. But yeah, I can't think of many songs that would beat it as an opening track of an album, apart from the only songs that I think would beat it would be Brian Storm. Just other Arctic Monkey songs, basically. No. I don't think there's any. Brian Storm would be a good contender, actually, out of all the other Arctic Monkeys ones, wouldn't it? Also, I mean, Do I Want to Know? Pretty good album opener, isn't it? Yeah. So they're just contending with themselves now. But no, I like the hot take, and I very much agree with it. But I recognise that other people might strongly disagree, and feel free to get in touch if you do and suggest some others. Because I would actually like to hear that feedback. If anyone does have any, I would like to actually hear some others genuinely. Because I'm saying that we feel that way, but it's not necessarily right. Is what I'm saying.
So all the ones I mentioned would be up there for me as well. They're the ones that for me are vying with the View for Afternoon. But I would love to, if people suggest something that we've not heard before, that'd be cool as well. Like kind of getting some new stuff off the back of this.
I can't whip it out of my head quick enough, but I'm sure there must be a Bowie album where the opening track's great. I mean, doesn't Modern Love open with Modern Love? It's a pretty good album opener, isn't it?
It does, and Hunky Dory starts with Changes as well.
Hunky Dory just
kind of like,
okay. Yeah.
All back. I'll take it all back. What I said.
Yeah. I mean, if it opened with Life on Mars, it'd be game over, right? But no.
Yeah, well, that was what I was worried about. That was what that's why I checked, because like, if I just boxed myself into a stupid corner here,
You've put yourself in a hole with a handheld idea. No, that's the kind of the lyric that we're referencing the most, bizarrely, isn't it? No, I agree. I'm sure there'll be loads, and maybe actually I'll do a bit of thinking, and we'll come back to it next week as well. But actually, so I referenced what my favorite lyric of the song was, when the 2 for 1's on the writer's block, etc. What would your favorite lyric be? I think I know what you might say. I think you might have already referenced it.
I can't get past the Larry girls hung out the window of the limousine. Of course, it's fancy dress, and they're all looking quite forlorn in bunny ears and devil horns, and how rhyming forlorn, like this kind of like half rhyme of forlorn and devil horns is just again like kind of like straying from where you'd expect it to go. Is kind of, but just the image that lyric conjures up of like hen nights. They'll go out, or a bachelorette party, is how transatlantic listeners would call it. But they'll go out all day. They'll hire a limousine. They'll go to various pubs and bars, and by midnight, they're in a mood with each other. They've fallen out. Someone's found out that the husband to be is cheating on them, and they will be looking forlorn. But they've still got the little devil horns and the bunny ears on, and that's just an image that never fails to make me laugh. It's one I've seen a million times.
Again, another like spot on cultural reference of the time. That just really you used to see that a lot, didn't you? That kind of thing. Actually, you just reminded me. I just want to briefly touch on this, but the music video, we didn't discuss. So the music video for this is interesting in that none of the band are in it. And they hired an actor to be the drummer. So if anyone hasn't, I'm assuming everyone here will have seen it, so I don't know how I'm going to describe it, but it's, I read a really crazy theory. I was kind of looking up, kind of going, okay, is there any interesting tidbits about this video? And there's a theory out there. This album represents every aspect of Buddha, the religion. And when I thought, obviously, but then when I read it, I was like a little bit more. I was like, oh, okay. So it was kind of. I can't remember, verbatim. It wasn't worth me compiling notes on it. It wasn't that good. But it was kind of like, because the innocence of the young schoolgirl during the day and how she's nice to him, and then in the evening it's kind of the terrible people. There was things like the fact the schoolgirl's wearing devil horns reference something in that religion, and there was a lot. So if you want to Google that, have a Google of it. It's a fun read. I think it's probably nonsense. I don't think Arctic Monkeys, from what I knew of them then, were sitting down and doing that, or maybe the person that directed the video did. But I would say that the reason they've linked it is because they are trying to put those themes in the video, like so that the nighttime difference of the estate to the daytime, and the innocence of the schoolgirl caring about him. I think that's what they're trying to convey, and it just happens to correspond with this person's view on the religion, whoever wrote that blog. But it was a mad thing to find.
It's quite a stretch, but I am in. I'm all in. That's my headcanon now. That's what I think.
I'll get the link, and I'll put it in the maybe I'll tweet a link out. Actually, if you follow our socials, you can maybe say the socials again, and I will send it out via socials.
Yes, so we are on Twitter and Instagram. We are at Arctic Podcast, and you can email us. Get in touch, arcticmonkeyspodcast@gmail.com. All in the right order. Make sure you get all that in the right order.
Yeah, and I'll send that out as this episode, as you're listening to this, I will have sent that out, and you can have a fun read of that.
We'll put it in the episode link as well. We'll put it in the episode description as well.
Yeah, so I'll find it. I mean, it is nonsense, but it's funny nonsense. But but it does also have a good interpretation of the video at base level, so it's interesting in that aspect. Good video. I like that video. I always thought it was a good video, just to see the drums, and also if no one hasn't seen Matt Helder's multicam DVD extra from Live at the Apollo, go on YouTube and crack that on, because wow, what a watch. You'll really see how good he is in this song, and every song, to be fair, but in particular this song. But yeah, So just to what were your? Did you have a kind of favorite musical moment in this song?
My favourite musical moment. Well, that means I
And I
get
think
to
we do have a
finally
jingle for that. Actually,
break out one of two jingles that we've not used yet.
Mad sounds in your ears. They make you get up and dance. They make you get up.
It does make me
Excellent.
get up. It makes me get up and dance. And it's once again, it's a little tiny kind of like guitar hook. It's the I've illustrated it as best I can there.
Wait. Okay. The diddle-diddle-down. Yep. Solid moment. Just again, also technically quite hard to do when you think about the speed at which they're playing to kind of stop and have that and then come back in. Quite a skill. You have to have great timing, really. Which, as I said, I alluded to on the first episode that we did. That I think that's because they learned together, that they kind of have developed that timing. Perhaps I could be talking shit, but that's what I think, and I stand by it. But my favorite musical moment in the song, it has to be the breakdown when it goes quiet and then the two cars come in, but specifically when the drums come back in, then do that, and then the drum fill before the whole band comes back in, because not only have you been delighted by the drums this entire song, they then do this amazing guitar breakdown, and then the drums come back in with this kind of hip hoppy beat to kind of bring the song back in, and then the guitars and everything stop, and he does this amazing drum fill, and then it all just storms back in. It's just I must have had about a 10-minute rant on the drums during this episode, but I'm going to say it again. Helders, you agile beast.
We have to do all the Helders drum talk in this episode because he doesn't really do much after this.
I think there'll be every song we can talk about Helder's drums, but the specific songs where you can really talk about Helder's drums in there, when he's really on it, and this is definitely one of them, as you heard.
I cannot wait for that. But maybe that can be a separate podcast, just Helders. We'll go through all the songs, but just talking about Helders.
Yeah, we could definitely fill that space. But yeah, no, I think we've always planned live watches and stuff. I think live watches of some of Helder's drumming is definitely an episode that we would do. Absolutely,
definitely. Oh, that just about wraps things up, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah,
that has been our deep dive into The View from the Afternoon, which is side one, track one of the multi-award winning, massive selling album, whatever, record-breaking album even, whatever people say I am, that's what I'm not. I have been Nick Lee. He has been Dan Holt. We will be back at the same time next week. And what track will we be chatting about next week, mate?
Well, very excitingly, we'll be discussing the second track on the album, which also happens to be the first single, and the video of which the namesake of this podcast comes from. I bet you'd look good on the dance floor. Oh, sorry, I bet that you'd look good on the dance floor, I should say. As it is. Which, interestingly, in my research for Beneath the Boardwalk, the reason I got fazed by that is because in my research for Beneath the Boardwalk, I noticed they dropped the I. So, I mean, they didn't have the I, and then they added the I when they made the album. So,
a very important distinction.
Stay tuned for observations like that.
yeah. Just a reminder, follow us on social media. We are at Arctic Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. We've got some clips coming up of episodes. We've got, if we find cool articles and videos, we'll probably share them. Anything Arctic Monkeys themed is good with us. Don't forget to email us. We are arcticmonkeyspodcast@gmail.com. Dan, you can have the last word, mate. What are you going to say to the people to whet their appetite for next week? You don't have to whet their appetite. I mean, if you've enjoyed this, they're in. They're already hooked.
Well, I'm going to give them a word of warning about next week because they've enjoyed this week so much that I'm sure they're going to be waiting with bated breath and ears for the next podcast. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of a warning, which is anticipation has the habit to set you up for evening entertainment. But
I'm just glad you didn't butcher that. And there's also a jingle. next week as well that we'll get to hear for the first time. So I'm mostly excited about that.
Yes, we get to use a feature that we don't always regularly get to use, and all that will be revealed next week.
Oh, what an exciting time. All this build up for a fucking 4-second jingle. We will see you next week. Say bye, Dan.
Goodbye. See you then.
Bye. Don't Believe the Hype is hosted and produced weekly by Nick Lee and Dan Holt. Music used in the titles is royalty-free music courtesy of Les FM. Don't forget to subscribe on your podcast player of choice to be notified every Wednesday when a new episode is released. And if you want to help us out further, be sure to like and review to help make us more visible to like-minded souls. We will see you next week with more of the same.